This video is brought to you by Nokian Tires, a leader in safety and sustainability. Maximize performance and efficiency with their made in USA all-season tires and their dedicated Hakkapeliitta EV winter line from the inventor of the winter tire. Learn more at nokiantires.com/EV. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Sort of a quick update with the Mustang Mach-E. We've had this car in on test this week, mostly for videos on our Out of Spec Guide channel. This is sort of the A to Z of EVs for beginners. My colleague Max really cranking away the videos. He did a great comparison of the Mustang Mach-E versus the Tesla Model Y and a few others, but I thought let's get it on the reviews channel because we've now driven Mach-E for, 3 years now going on, almost. So, I wanted to share some of the updates that I think Ford needs to make to the vehicle to really bring it into the modern era. So this will be a little bit of a list of requests, if you will, to Ford. But then also I wanted to share some really positive things about the Mach-E that still keep it in a class-leading position in many categories. So overall, what we're going to do is share basically my list of improvements and the accolades that the Mach-E has as my subjective opinion. This is a 2023 Mustang Mach-E Extended Range All-Wheel Drive Premium. It's sort of the luxury spec, the top spec, if you will, before you get into the spicier versions like the GT and the GT Performance. Now, just recently we had a Mustang Mach-E GT on this channel testing BlueCruise 1.2. I encourage you to check out that video because it absolutely nailed it in our Hogback series. I think maybe it was number 1 or number 2, I can't quite remember, but one of the best driver assistance systems ever, and really shows what updates can do to improve a car over time. And I have to give Ford props. This was their first mainstream electric car that they've launched, and of course we were lucky enough to be one of the first ones to review it, and we've had them on loan, and we've had friends who have bought them, and a lot of our viewers have bought these cars. So many of you guys own Mach-E, and I just have to say Ford has really been ears wide open to suggestions, to feedback, to their customers, and also to reviewers to help shape, I imagine, the future of electric vehicles from the Ford brand. So Mustang Mach-E, F-150 Lightning, very much Gen 1 products, amazing products in their own rights, but I think they're learning so much, and they're constantly on the forums, and I've talked to Darren Palmer for years about this. They are constantly looking for feedback, and well, in this video they're going to get my feedback on the Mustang Mach-E and what I think needs to be improved. First, let me take you on a quick tour of the car, because one of the things I think they did right is the styling. This is a good looking car. This particular trim, this color, maybe not what I would go for. Alyssa, what's your impression of the styling? It has this really cool sloping roof line back here, but then this bit is black, so you still get great rear seat headroom. Overall, it's a nice design.
I mean, yeah, I think it looks great. I mean, it's definitely an eye catcher. But I agree with you. The white is probably not, I think, all blacked out. Just murder it out, and it looks good.
Blacked out. I'm actually a fan of the Cyber Orange Mach-E GT Performance. They have really good wheels in the GT Performance. That's the trim I think makes a lot of sense. But I think it's time to really get into what would we improve about the Mach-E. Maybe we'll show you the interior really quick, just for our viewers so they can get an idea of what it looks like on the inside. You can see really nice design interior, actually. Really nice glass roof in this particular one. Driver instrument cluster. Alyssa, even you compliment the interior. You say it looks beautiful, the materials are great, it seems to be built pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy sitting inside of the car. I don't have any gripes about that. I do have some gripes that I'll share later, but the interior and overall styling, I mean, they really nailed it, and I'm excited to see kind of what more comes with it.
Yeah, totally. The Gen 2 is going to be pretty cool. So I've made a list, actually, because I've been in and out of this car for the last week, and it's a vehicle I'm so familiar with from a charging perspective, from a performance perspective, and I thought, okay, I think there's enough here to make a list of improvements. So let's start out with the first one. The biggest problem with the Mustang Mach-E today is the price. Now, when this car was produced, this is a $68,000 window sticker. However, that's where most journalists would leave you. I actually went and configured this car online. There's been a huge price reduction and it's now about 63,000, 62,000 as it sits. That's before tax credits and state incentives. The only problem with that is the Tesla Model Y long range, which is a direct competitor to this vehicle, is $10,000 less. So you're spending a lot more money to get into a Mustang Mach-E than the Tesla Model Y, which already has access to the supercharger network and the North American charging standard already on the vehicle, with autopilot included at no cost on that vehicle. I mean, the Model Y is the big elephant in the room. But what the Mach-E did was it offered a great alternative to Tesla, especially when Tesla was more expensive. And I think, honestly, Ford had big price reductions. I think they got to come out with a really cheap lease on this car in order to incentivize people to go for it. They're available on lots immediately. Almost every Ford dealer seems to have these things in stock. That big bubble of orders has sort of been filled, and I think, you know, the price, sure, I know it's expensive to build electric cars for Ford, and I think there needs to be a cheap lease. Alyssa, what would make sense in terms of a number? Because you can lease a Model Y for, you know, let's just say $600 a month with a few thousand down. What would you think the Mach-E would need to go for you to choose this over a Model Y right off the bat?
Just in terms of a lease payment?
Yeah.
I would say probably in the $500 to $550 range to be competitive. But because there is a lot of things that this car doesn't get that a Model Y still gets, I mean, you do have to, just to be competitive, you do gotta massage that pricing a little bit.
Totally agree. And keep in mind, we're talking about this particular premium version. There are less expensive versions of Mach-E with a smaller battery pack and a soon to come LFP battery pack. That might actually be the one to go for. I'm really looking forward to testing out that new battery pack, and maybe that new pricing could make a lot of sense. But I think most people, at least from what I see our neighbors drive, we have a lot of neighbors with Mach-E, they're all over here. They're either going for the extended range all-wheel drive. Again, we are in Colorado, so it's probably a bit skewed. And also we're seeing a lot of GTs and GT performances. So people are spending upwards of, you know, $60,000, $70,000, $75,000 for their Mach-E's. And that's the mix that we're seeing, at least here in northern Colorado. Now, granted, this is a fairly affluent area of the country. I'm sure in different parts of the country, you'll see a mix towards a lower, lower priced version, but there is no question the Model Y is a better value for what you get on paper. Now, there's a few things the Mach-E offers that the Model Y doesn't have: nicer interior, better styling, few other things, and we'll definitely get into those later in the video. But I just had to start with the price because I think it needs to massively be improved. The next thing, it's just a little gripe, but let me just show you what bugs me about the car. Ford has a fairly okay app for this vehicle, but what's weird is actually, and this isn't on my list, but it is interesting, in order to precondition the cabin, you actually have to like hit remote start on the Ford Pass app, and it turns the lights on the outside. Like, I don't want to start the car, I just want the climate control running. And that's very much like old school thinking with electric vehicles, where a combustion engine has to be running to run climate control, sort of like a remote start from a key. Not needed with EVs. Just kick the climate on and you know, make sure the car stays off and locked and it doesn't draw any attention to itself. But here's what bugs me. I love the door handles, by the way. These are really cool. You hit the button, pops the door out. This works great. Take a look here on the screen. I've opened the door, I've opened the car. First of all, unlike a Tesla, the air conditioning isn't running as soon as you get in the vehicle, and we have no idea the state of charge, no idea the range. So if I just open up the car without my key in my pocket, for example,
Still dancing around.
No, it'll just run all the time. So if I just open up the car, I get no data about it. I have no idea. And it's not until you actually physically turn it on with the start stop button, which is very old school. So now that the car is on, we can see 77% state of charge and 217 miles predicted remaining. Let's just kick this back off. So my recommendation to Ford is have a state of charge display. As soon as the car's unlocked and open, turn on the climate control, get the screens on. Don't make me hit a start button. Why is that even a thing? The one thing that you can have, you know, left over, this is how Rivian does it, this is how Tesla does it, is when there's a person in the car, when there's an authenticated key or phone as a key, which this car does support phone as a key, and that works really well. When you get in, then the only thing left you need a start button for, you can use a brake pedal for it, is just to activate the drive rail. Everything else should be untied to user activation, in my opinion. So let us see the state of charge on the screen. Speaking of state of charge, these are just little EV things that we get used to driving other vehicles that this is missing out on. There's no easy way to set a state of charge maximum charging limit on this vehicle. There are a few ways where you can tie, when you create a profile for a location, a few menus deep in the charging menu, you can say when the car's at this exact coordinates, basically have it charged between these hours of the day, so you can set it up for time of use, and up to the maximum charge level of 80%, 60%, whatever you want to charge your car to every day. But as soon as you unplug and go to a friend's house, it's just automatically going to charge to full. And I think we've all gotten used to, in the EV charging world, even so much that Alyssa's 2019 Audi e-tron has this, is just a global state of charge limit, that on the screen I'll have a slider and I can slide it from, let's say, 40 to 100% state of charge and increments in between to the maximum level that I want to charge to. Now, with the Mach-E LFP coming out, that may not be as necessary, because you can full charge LFP and they have much better discharge performance and degradation performance over time. But it's still better to not just leave them full all the time. Most importantly, with the NMC chemistry on this, I wish there was a global state of charge limit in the vehicle. Unfortunately, there's not, and it's a bit of pain in the butt. The other thing, we'll just get into an actual major problem early on in the video that I think our viewers should be aware of. There's something called a high voltage junction box on the Mustang Mach-E. And this essentially is a component, a module inside of the high voltage systems of the vehicle that's responsible for the transfer of high voltage power from the battery pack in and out, if you will, the junction box. And this, surprisingly, on early Mustang Mach-E's, pretty much all of them will fail at some point, is my understanding. Whether or not it's from quick driving, whether it's from a lot of DC fast charging, and we've even seen it fail on a few other cars. Now, thankfully, Ford will take care of the issue. You bring it to the dealer and they'll fix it. But it's really something to keep your eye out. The way you know is basically you turn the car on, it won't go into gear. That could be two things. Your 12-volt battery could be dead or low, which this car does have some 12-volt issues, and there should be, I think, newer software takes care of a lot of that. But then the high voltage junction box, I'm in the Mustang Mach-E groups. I'm seeing it happen way more and more. And sadly and scarily, actually, is the new high voltage junction box that's in new Mustang Mach-E, as well as the replacement parts. I've seen examples of both of these now failing as well. And this can be a really scary situation, especially if you get one out of warranty. So I hope Ford puts an extended warranty on the high voltage junction box. I hope there's a campaign where dealers can understand how to quickly replace them and have parts on hand. And I really hope that this is an issue that can be tuned out through software or mitigated in some way, because basically the contactors are just fusing together. Overall, the whole, on this topic, the whole thermal performance of the Mach-E is very much Gen 1. You guys know when we talk about charging the Mustang Mach-E, we get this boost period of time and then it falls off this curve. The F-150 is actually, the Lightning is the same way. And basically, this is a maximum current limitation over a period of time that this car has in and out of the battery packs. It's to save the contactors, the connection points throughout it. And it's also a way, because Ford didn't spend all the money to put temperature sensors everywhere in the vehicle, it's a way for them to artificially make sure nothing gets hot spotted and there's no dangerous issue. So it's out of an abundance of caution, and that they also have to warranty these vehicles and these battery packs for a long time. But they are the most conservative out of almost anyone except maybe Toyota in this regard. And what it leads to is a poor customer experience. On the performance side, especially with Mach-E GT and GT Performance, with huge current in and out of the battery pack, because you're getting a lot of power output and a lot of regen. But I've had it happen even on just rear-wheel drive California Route 1. When you drive them hard enough, they derate the maximum power output all the way actually till when turtle mode kicks in. And I recently had Mach-E GT Performance. I did a whole full in-depth driving review of it, and that's on this channel. And you get this burst of power, and then pretty much for the rest of the drive, as long as you're flowing current in and out of the battery pack, it really limits you. Now, the GT and GT Performance have a mode called Unbridled Extend, and what that does is basically limit the total power output of the vehicle, and I think even limit maximum regen so that your current flow is reduced. I've never seen any other car do this arbitrary current flow limitation, basically to hope things don't overheat. And Unbridled Extend just makes the car really slow and not fun, but it means you can just hammer on it all the time, but it just reduces the fun of the vehicle. So that's a really poor situation. And for something that holds the Mustang name, you know, we're kind of past that. I think Ford made the right decision by calling this a Mustang. It should have better performance cred, especially in the top trim ones, especially when the Tesla Model Y performance, which you can hammer on all day long. You know, there are still thermal limitations in that vehicle, but they're actual thermal limitations, not just an arbitrary derate out of abundance of caution. You're just derating a Model Y because things are actually about to melt. Yeah, that to me is, you know, and it's $15,000 less than a GT performance, a Model Y performance. They really have to get the performance credit of this car down. Continuing on, the arbitrary limits of the battery pack I spoke about, that leads to a poor charging performance throughout the whole thing. It charges very poorly up top, but I don't see Mach-E owners really complaining about DC fast charging times. And my impression is Mach-E is a lot of people's first long-range electric vehicle. A lot of them came from Bolts or Lease or from combustion cars and may not realize what a class-leading electric vehicle should charge like. I mean, if I'm at a charging stop for more than 10 to 15 minutes, I'm frustrated. I'm like, let's get the heck out of here. This is a 45 minute charging car here, because you hit that big peak, and once you come off 200 seconds or whatever it is at 150 kilowatts, 160 kilowatts, it just sits at 100 for the rest, and it's pretty brutal actually. What else should we say about this thing? Well, there's one annoyance actually, which is I will demonstrate to you right now. So let's say we pull up to a charging station. I'm going to basically demonstrate this really quick. Car is on, I'm in drive, I have a roll up to a charging station. I'm going to put it in park. I'm going to get out of the vehicle and I'm going to plug it in. Listen, those beeps, why does it beep? So frustrating. And
you have your keys on you, don't you?
Well, that's the problem, is I've basically gotten out of the vehicle with it running, which again shouldn't, this is all ICE car logic, and it's saying, hey, you're walking away but your car is still on. It's just like, how about you just shut off when I get out and just keep climate control running and then turn drive rail back on when I'm able to go? Because every time I get to an EA station, I don't want to shut the car off. I want AC running. I get out, I always have the key on me, beep beep, people look, they're like, who's he honking at? And I'm like, sorry, no, it's just the car. And then you can go and plug it in. But it's like, why? Just turn off the beep or change the logic of the way the car works, which is anytime it is unlocked, anytime there's a weight sensor in the seat, or anytime that the door is open, all of your electronics are on, climate control is on, everything's operational. Just don't let anyone drive it until you have, you know, brake pedal or start stop button pushed. That would solve the beep beep function. Anyway, that's kind of it. So what's the last thing I want to change about the Mustang Mach-E? My last suggestion here would be magnetic ride control, which they offer on the Mustang Mach-E GT Performance, but I think they need to use the mag ride in a comfort version on the Mach-E Premium. This is already carrying a higher price than a Tesla Model Y. And in my impression, it actually rides worse than a Tesla Model Y. It might be actually slightly softer than even the new Model Y suspension, but the whole rear end is all over the place. It's so bouncy, and you know, it's on little 225 bicycle tires, so there's no grip, there's no braking performance. Anytime you floor it, it's spinning tires. I mean, there's no traction with this car, but the suspension doesn't help keep everything level and on the ground. The whole car is moving around and bobbing and weaving. And the GT is probably the worst offender, because now you're taking that stock suspension with some different changes, but that same suspension logic, and then you're applying a lot of power to it. It's like, whoa, GT Performance really settles down the car, and in fact actually almost rides smoother and more controlled than even the GT does, which I don't think a lot of people realize when they're making those buying decisions. Only go for the GT Performance, not the GT. That's my suggestion. But Alyssa, what's your impression just from a general passenger seat? I mean, you've also driven this car around, you've driven Mach-E a bunch. Do you think it would benefit from better damper controls to settle down the movements and maybe smooth out the car slightly? I
mean, definitely yes. For the price of everything, it needs to be a lot smoother driving car, because if it's compared to the Model Y, and actually Max and I compared that, and it is a big difference. We did a little pothole test, and this one was just like hug-a-bugging everywhere, and definitely needs that. And there is one thing that is my biggest gripe about this car. Can you guess what it is?
I have no idea. You haven't told me.
Yes, I have.
Oh.
Pet. There's no type of pet mode.
Sure.
There's no way to keep there is a way to keep the air on. And I asked our friends over at Mach-E Vlog, you have to keep the car on, leave your keys in the car, and then lock your car from the outside with the keypad in order to keep the climate on. But there is absolutely no way to check within the app if it's ever turned off or what the temperature is. And I'm like, oh, well, that just completely fails the test, because if I don't know what the temperature is in there, I'm never gonna keep a child. Well, you should never keep a child in there, or
a dog
in there, or I mean, just like me with anybody, like there's no way to keep it. There is an accessory option, but still at that point you're not able to tell what the temperature is.
When you put the car in park, there should be two options that come on the screen. It should be, do you want to leave the car in pet mode, or do you want to just leave climate control on? Because 80% of my trips away from home is I park the car, we run in, we do something, we're back in 5, 10, 15 minutes. I just want the car to stay cool. I don't want to have to then pull out my app and wait for it to connect and get to the AC. Just give me the option to leave climate on right on the screen. Let me monitor the interior climate temperature from my phone. And if there is a dog in the car, throw the message up there that says it's okay, it's being remotely monitored. Tesla dog mode is a life hack. Rivian pet comfort still needs some fine tuning, but it's pretty good. And so, yeah, there's no reason why this car shouldn't offer it. And I'm really hoping more companies do that. So I think that's maybe enough of our constructive criticism of the Mach-E. I'd like to share some things that I think it does better than almost any electric car in its class. And Alyssa, do you have anything that you truly love about the Mach-E that you want to share?
I mean, I haven't spent too much time with it. I think my overall thing is just the looks and not ride comfort, but the seat comfort is really nice inside of it.
Yeah, and the interior spacing, the way things are put.
Overall, like, your day doesn't get worse when you're sitting in the car. It might just get a little worse when you drive over a pothole or two.
I actually do get a little bit annoyed driving the non-GT performance Mach-E's, because I'm just like, I just wish I could tune the car a little bit differently. But I'm also a nerd, and it isn't really something that I see, many Mach-E owners complaining about.
Mach-E owners, they really do. They love their cars, so it's definitely,
yeah, whatever Ford's doing is working.
Right, yeah, and I think all of those people, mainly, that's their first electric car. I feel like that's a huge percentage, and that's a great market to hit. But again, like you said, that they just don't realize what more there is to offer with an electric car. So
it's a lot of the little things that need to be improved. So let me tell you what I love about the Mustang Mach-E. The first is the range. These cars go. Especially, they're very affected by cold temperature and actually even warm temperature, but on a mild day, they're very efficient. And we've done over 340 miles on a single charge in a Mustang Mach-E before, not even trying, just up and over I-70, cruising forever. And, that was the California Route 1, the range spec. But even this on the, there's a lot of things that they're doing to get the range, but 225 section tires, and very small wheel, and they're very inset, as well as a fairly efficient drivetrain. These are the things that Ford really focused on, which is, the number one customer complaint automakers still tell us, or concern, is range anxiety. And for me, I'm like, as people experience electric cars, range anxiety goes away and it becomes road tripping range. Can you get it to a fast charger, and how long do you have to stay there to go? We ran this car in the 10% challenge. It only did roughly 70 miles, where a comparable Tesla Model Y on bigger wheels and tires went well over 100 miles. Or actually, no, it didn't. It did about 100 miles. So 30% better performance on the Model Y for a cheaper car on a road trip. That's actually saving you time getting to where you need to go. That's a measurable difference. But this does have that big initial full charge range, and it just needs to work on the road trip ability a little bit. But thankfully they have plug-in charge working out. They've also, a big positive to this car is Ford was the first one to start this movement towards the Tesla North American charging standard, where this port will become the Tesla NACS connector, North American Charging Standard. It means we can say goodbye to this, which it's, this isn't really the problem. It's everything behind that that's the problem, which is the charging infrastructure. And so Ford, rightly so, recognized that they want to provide a great charging experience to their customers, and they're going to be switching these over in 2025 with the Tesla plugs. And I just love that. And I think we have to give Ford so much credit for the transition, and also for them listening to feedback, listening to us, and understanding that a change needs to happen in regards to how Ford EVs are used. and that was the best one possible. So that's a huge highlight of Mustang Mach-E. All these owners, all of these cars will get an adapter in 2024, and they'll be natively connected at 2025 to use the supercharger network, I imagine, with plug-in charge through ISO 15118, and be just a seamless, easy experience. The other thing that this car does really well, actually, is with Ford BlueCruise. We just did 1.2. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video. The key core competency of 1.2 is it's just so locked in the lane. No more sort of fumbling around. You can do automatic lane changes. It's really nice. And overall, the system is a very relaxing system to use on long trips. I haven't spent as much time with BlueCruise 1.2 as I have with Tesla Autopilot, but I've had no phantom braking in this, no emergency crazy whatever that I have had in Tesla Autopilot. Tesla Autopilot definitely can do more. It's more competent. It expands to city streets, and you really have to watch over that system more of the time. I think this is actually what a lot of people are looking for.
I mean, I honestly prefer it over the Tesla.
It's just relaxed. I mean, you just stay in the lane. It does its thing. It's fairly reliable. You got to help it through hard situations, but that's kind of what I want out of a driver assistance system. It's not something that I'm worried like, oh my God, is it going to slam on the brakes, or do I have to babysit it? Is it going to stop for the red light? Is it gonna, what turn is it going to make? When? And to me, we're just not there with FSD beta yet. Of course we aren't. It's fun to watch it work. This is relaxing. This is a nice cruising car for sure. So if you have a long commute, this car is quiet, fairly efficient. It's the one, honestly, I think, to choose over a Model Y, as long as you're not doing these multi-charge stop trips at the moment.
And they're coming out with 1.3 here in the summer, sometime this summer.
Yeah, I was talking to Ryan about that. We can't figure out what's different about 1.3 than 1.2. The release notes all seem the same.
Yeah, I mean, I can chat more with
maybe
my
you
contact
can get some more detail
to see what the deal, but I don't think they're really releasing anything until they release everything.
Sure. I also know Sammy, who runs Ford's ADAS program. He's a great guy, and he gave me all the briefing before we did the hogback, just like how the system works and what they intended to work on, and I actually really agreed with a lot of their approach, so I think that was all great. Some other things that I like about the Mach-E, I mentioned the door handles are great. I really actually like the dial in the screen just to get your climate control and your volume all set, and just want to show our viewers this very quickly in front of the obligatory Starbucks drink. That dial is so cool. It's actually glued onto the screen. It's very tactile. And, there's a lot of Tesla people that are like, oh, any interface, any button is a disaster. And I'm like, nah, I don't think that's the case. For me personally, I love reaching down there and just cranking up, cranking down. It works every time. And through software updates, which Ford has really been supporting this car through over-the-air software updates better than any existing automaker has with any of their products, that knob now has more functionality than when it did the last time I tested it. So I have to give them props with that. Yeah, I mean, really the only other thing that I have to say here is Ford is like, the reason this car is so good today, has a great interior, great design, great range, is because Ford really tried. This was their first mass market electric vehicle. They put in all the effort. They literally put the Mustang name on it. They put the brand on the line with this product. And I think it's done them a great service. It has a very positive reception out in the public market. People feel good about buying Mach-E's. I see them driving around. They love them. And I think it's really when you start understanding and living with a lot of different electric cars, do you realize, okay, there's some room for improvement still with the Mach-E, but they're so close to dialing it in. Really, the last few items that they need to do is just fix the thermals, get the EV stuff working so you don't have a start-stop button, and basically you just get climate on as soon as you open the car, and all these little things, dog mode, etc. And now, when you get Mach-E facelift or Mach-E Gen 2, if they can fix a lot of these things, we have ourselves a pretty serious car, and in pretty quick time as well. So I really hope Ford is listening. I hope these things come. The Mach-E Rally version is coming very soon. Can't wait to see what that has, but I hope it's got juicier performance and, traction control off and drift modes and all the cool things you guys know we want from our vehicles. Basically, look at what the Hyundai Ioniq 5N has in it and slap that in the Mach-E with a lift kit. I know they're very different companies, but you have this is the competition space right now. You're going up against high voltage cars with extreme powertrain technologies, with huge warranties, and honestly fairly good reliability. Ford's got to crank the dial. We know they are. They keep saying the next generation truck is going to be crazy and a few other things. I know they're working on these things. I know they know a lot of what I'm saying here, but I hope this helps you. And of course, it's a reference for the guys at Ford to say at least what I would like out of the car. If that helps, I hope it does. But truly enjoy the Mustang Mach-E. Little things can make it better. Can't thank you enough for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. See you in another one soon. Bye-bye.